It's like, you talk about vented.
Yeah.
You talk about vented.
All right, we'll call the meeting to order. Good evening, everyone. Mr. City Attorney, do you have any closed session reports?
Mr. Mayor.
And since you have the mic and you're so ready, would you please lead us in the pledge?
Please rise. Place your hand over your heart. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
to the republic
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Lister?
Here.
Councilmember Luevanos?
Here.
Councilmember Kavanaugh?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Judge?
Good.
And Mayor Mashburn?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Judge is participating remotely tonight. Thank you.
Okay, I get to read the guidelines for the meeting at this time. While California and Ventura County are seeing a downward trend on the number of positive cases and hospitalizations, COVID-19 is still with us. As such, Simi Valley and the other 9 cities in the county continue to hold their council meetings without the public in attendance. Although the public is not here, there are still opportunities for the listening public to participate in this council meeting. The public statements procedures continues as it has for prior meetings. As noted on the agenda, the public was encouraged to submit emails concerning tonight's agenda. For emails submitted prior to 12 noon today, those emails have been provided to us. They will be made part of the record but will not be read by the city clerk tonight. We have 3 opportunities for public statements this evening. The first opportunity is to comment on agenda item 2, appointments, special presentations, and informational reports. If you wish to make a comment on appointments, special presentations, and informational reports portion of the agenda, emails received after 12 noon today up to the beginning of this agenda item will be read by the city clerk this evening. Emails should be sent to the city clerk's office at publicstatements@simivalley.org. Include in the subject line agenda item number 2 and should be limited to 250 words or less. At the beginning of this agenda item, email receipt will be closed. Subsequently, the city will read the emails received for a period of 30 minutes. Every effort will be made to read all emails into the record, but some emails may not be read due to time limitations. Emails received after the beginning of this agenda item or unread emails will be made part of the record if received prior to the end of the meeting. The second opportunity is to provide testimony on agenda item 4, public hearings on the agenda. If you wish to provide testimony on item 4, the public hearings portion of the agenda, emails received after 12 noon today and during the meeting may be read at the council meeting. Emails should be sent to the city's clerk office at publicstatements@simivalley.org. Include in the subject line the agenda item number, i.e. agenda item 4A, and should be limited to 250 words or less. At the conclusion of the staff presentation for each hearing under item 4, email receipt will be closed. Subsequently, the city will read the emails received for a period of 30 minutes. Every effort will be made to read all emails into the record, but some emails may not be read due to time limitations. Emails received after the conclusion of the staff presentation of item 4 or unread emails will be made part of the record if received prior to the end of the meeting. The third opportunity is agenda item 5, public statements, items on the agenda. The same procedure will be used for public statements. Emails received after 12 noon today up to the beginning of this agenda item will be read by the city clerk this evening. Emails should be sent to the city clerk's office at publicstatements@simivalley.org. Include in the subject line agenda item number 5 and limit it to 250 words. At the beginning of this agenda item, email receipt will be closed. No new emails will be received and read. The city clerk will begin to read the emails received since noon today, spending 3 minutes on each email. The city clerk will spend 30 minutes total reading emails. For those emails that are not read, they will be entered into the record. So right now, you can still send emails that may be read during the meeting for agenda items 2, 4, and 5. The city thanks you for your patience. During this local emergency, the city is making every attempt to continue to allow the public to participate in the business of the city. With that said, we can move on with the meeting. City Clerk, you may continue.
Mr. Mayor, agenda review, item 1.
Did everybody look at the agenda? Any comments? Okay, agenda's good.
I move that all resolutions and ordinances presented tonight be read in title only and all further reading be waived.
Second.
Call for the vote.
Please vote yes for me.
Got it.
The motion passes unanimously.
Okay, next item is declaration of conflict. Any council member have any conflict with tonight's agenda? None? How about you, Mr. Judge?
None, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, the first item on the agenda is item 1D1, an honorary resolution commemorating the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment giving women the right to vote, and Samantha Argabright is here to read the resolution or proclamation.
Good evening, Mayor Mashburn and members of the City Council. This evening's resolution honoring the ratification of the 19th Amendment will be sent to the American Association of University Women following this evening's meeting. I will now read the resolution. Whereas the year 2020 marks the 100th anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment to the United States Constitution, guaranteeing and protecting women's rights to vote. And whereas this centennial offers an opportunity to commemorate a milestone of democracy, that a citizen's right to vote shall not be denied based on gender. And whereas the fight for suffrage first began nationally in July of 1848, and in California, the legislature passed a bill recognizing women's right to vote 45 years later in 1893, which was later vetoed by the governor. And whereas California voters narrowly passed a referendum in 1911 granting women the right to vote. And whereas on June 4th, 1919, Congress passed the 19th Amendment guaranteeing all American women the right to vote. And on November 1st, 1919, California ratified the 19th Amendment, and further, by August 1920, 36 states had ratified the constitutional amendment guaranteeing women across the country the right to vote. Now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Simi Valley that it hereby honors the 100th anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment and the countless women who fought for this right so many years ago. Presented this 24th day of August, 2020.
Okay. Any comments?
If I may, Mayor. The American Association of University Women came forward asking for this. Last year, they were here to accept it in person. Unfortunately, because of COVID, they are not able to do so right now. But for all the women, all the girls, all our daughters and nieces and granddaughters, we understand that the fight, the struggle, the sacrifices that were made, the lives that were lost, and the incarceration that women went through and the persecution that women went through in order to get the right to vote. And it is a precious right that we must preserve, that we must continue to fight for, and that we must exercise. And so I'm really glad that we're doing this proclamation again. I know there's going to be cities across the country that are going to be lighting up in gold and purple to honor the suffragettes and the women who fought for our rights and our daughters' rights and our nieces and granddaughters' rights to have the right to vote. So I'm really, really grateful that we're doing this proclamation for the city of Simi Valley, and that we're honoring all these women, from Ida B. Wells to Susan B. Anthony, who fought the fight so that we could have the right to vote, and so that three of us could be up here on this dais right now. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to add, too, it's interesting that all three of us women are wearing a portion of white, which was the color that suffragettes wore at that time. And I just think it is truly a wonderful time that we can be the descendants of such great decision that was made 100 years ago. And so it is most appropriate that we have this proclamation today. Thank you.
They both said everything.
Well, I'll say something from a man's standpoint. And that is, I had the pleasure of working for an elected lady, Judy Michaels, and it was a great experience. And a very talented lady, very smart, great leader, and it was a pleasure to have worked for her.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next on the agenda is item 1D2, an honorary resolution in celebration of Juneteenth or Freedom Day, marking the 155th anniversary. And Samantha Argabright is also here for this resolution.
Mayor Mashburn and members of the City Council. This evening's resolution encouraging residents to honor June 19th through August 25th will be sent to the 400 Years of African American History Commission following this evening's meeting. And now I will read the resolution. Whereas June 19th, 2020, better known as Juneteenth or Freedom Day, marked the 155th anniversary of the arrival of Union General Gordon Granger in Galveston, Texas, where 2.5 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, African Americans learned of the end of enslavement with the words, "All slaves are free." And whereas August 25th, 2020, marks the 401st anniversary of the arrival of Africans in the American colonies, and we acknowledge the heritage and contributions that African Americans have made to shape the cultural, academic, social, economic, and moral attributes of the United States, in spite of slavery and the challenges faced because of racial discrimination. And whereas Juneteenth celebrates freedom as well as how the emancipation was tragically delayed for enslaved people, and serves as an opportunity for all Americans to recommit to combat all forms of modern-day slavery, human trafficking, and racial injustice. And whereas in 1997, the United States Congress passed Senate Joint Resolution 11 and House Joint Resolution 56, officially recognizing Juneteenth Independence Day. And whereas we call upon the citizens of Simi Valley to celebrate the great diversity of the American people and to collectively strive to affirm the promise to eradicate prejudice, racism, and injustice for all. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Simi Valley that it hereby encourages all citizens to honor June 19th through August 25th, 2020, as a time of reflection, education, and commitment to end racism and all forms of dehumanization, presented this 24th day of August, 2020.
Thank you. Comments?
Mayor, if I may? Thank you, Mayor. We had our first ever Juneteenth celebration here in Simi Valley on June 19th from 4 to 7 p.m. at Lemon Park. And it was an amazing event. It was documented by several reporters that were there. I was there in attendance, and it was beautiful to see so many people from our community come to celebrate this. This celebration of culture, of freedom, of dignity. And it's a necessary component of what we need to do in order to recognize the dignity and humanity of every single person in the city. For most Black Americans, 4th of July is not their Freedom Day. For most Black Americans in this country, in over 36 states, Juneteenth is an official holiday in over 36 states in this country, because that is the day that they finally experienced actual freedom 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. And so for Black Americans, it is a really, really important holiday for them, because that's when they were finally recognized as being free citizens. And yet, here we are again, so many hundreds of years later, still fighting that fight for people like Jacob Blake, for people like Breonna Taylor, for people like George Floyd, for our families in this community. And I think it's wonderful that we have this celebration of Juneteenth. There were people, there representatives from the NAACP. There was slam poetry, there was music, there was a sense of community, and I hope that this is something that the city recognizes every year for Juneteenth, because it's a really important component of our history here in this country that is finally being recognized in this community. And so I'm really grateful for all the young organizers, including Ms. Foster and all the people who participated and led that celebration. Over $1,000 were raised and given to the NAACP in Ventura County and to another entity that helps people who are incarcerated make bail. And so it was a really, really wonderful event, a cultural event, and we hadn't had one like that. And I know it's something that our youth council has been asking for. I know that's something that the Simi Cultural Arts Center has been asking for. And it actually helped fulfill a requirement for the Citizenship in the World for Boy Scouts. So there were a lot of Boy Scout families that were out earning that component of attending a cultural event, and we really haven't had that since we've lost the Cajun Festival now. We haven't had the Nottingham Festival, so it was a beautiful expression of culture and unity in this community. So I'm really, really proud and grateful that we're having this, and I hope that we honor Juneteenth and we honor Black Americans in this community by making sure that we hold people accountable and that we make sure that we provide them with the dignity that everyone is deserving of in this community, and to let them know that Black lives matter. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Actually, I'd just like to return to the purpose for the proclamation, to honor Juneteenth and the freedoms given to Black Americans who've struggled and fought. I have had the privilege of traveling to Ghana on 2 occasions and have stood and seen where some of our Black Americans were forcibly brought to this country. And I just want to say that I think it is most appropriate that we commend the freedoms of all people, and that's very appropriate that we would have this proclamation that simply reminds us that all of us are created free and equal. And so thank you for that proclamation.
Thank you.
That's it.
I'd just like to say thank you that we are able to do this as a city, to recognize special things and occasions, and to say why. We did the 100 years of the vote, now we did the 155 years for Juneteenth. It makes me proud that our city as a whole can recognize these, and I love signing those resolutions, and I think it's great that we're going to be sending them to people that will really appreciate them, or the groups that will appreciate them. So thank you.
I attended the Juneteenth celebration here just across the parking lot in the park, and it was a great event, and they certainly deserved that type of celebration and enjoyed it, and like Ruth Luevano said, it definitely was a community event, which was very good. So thank you and congratulations. Mayor Pro Tem Judd, do you have anything to say?
I think it's an outstanding proclamation, and I'm glad we did it.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next on the agenda is item 2, public statements on appointments, special presentations, and informational reports. And there were no public statements received for this item. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next item on the agenda is 3A1, appointment of Simi Valley Cultural Arts Center Foundation board members. And Kelly Tinker is here for this presentation.
Good evening, Mayor Mashburn and members of the City Council. The Simi Valley Cultural Arts Center Foundation is a separate 501c3 nonprofit organization that provides endowment and annual financial support to the Simi Valley Cultural Arts Center. The foundation board is comprised of up to 21 voting members, and although it is not part of the city, the foundation's board includes 7 City Council appointed public members. Currently, there are 3 City Council appointed vacancies, with terms beginning on September 1st, 2020, and concluding on June 30th, 2024. On August 13th, 2020, Mayor Mashburn and Mayor Pro Tem Judge conducted the applicant interviews virtually using Zoom. A total of 5 applicant interviews were originally scheduled. However, only 4 of those applicants participated. 1 applicant canceled. 3 of those applicants are being recommended for appointment this evening. The nominees recommended for appointment to the Simi Valley Cultural Arts Center Foundation Board are as follows: Christy Evanhawk, E.P. McKnight, and Gregory Safane. It is recommended that the City Council approve and the mayor appoint the 3 nominees to the Simi Valley Cultural Arts Center Foundation Board for a term commencing September 1st, 2020, and concluding on June 30th, 2024. This concludes this report, and staff is available to answer any questions.
Questions, comments?
I just wanted to say I read the applications from the 3 recommended people, and I think they're very well qualified to join this commission, or excuse me, to join the Cultural Arts Center Foundation Board.
Thank you. I was on the committee, and I have to echo what Dee Dee just said, that they were extremely qualified. And I'd like to add that staff put together a great package to inform the interviewers, and the questions were very relevant, I thought, and I appreciated that. And we got to know the people quite well very rapidly. And I also like to point out there was 3 openings and 4 that we talked to, and all 4 were quite capable, and so we had to make a decision to leave one behind, but we recommended that that person go forward to the foundation and apply because he was also very well qualified, and I think would be a good addition to the foundation. But all in all, great group. I don't know who did the recruitment, but boy, that was a great job, and welcome these people aboard. I wish they were here where we could introduce them.
Mayor, I have a question for staff, if I may. Yes, on page 1 of the staff report, it says that the Simi Valley Cultural Arts Center Foundation is a separate 501c3 nonprofit. And I understand, its purpose is to provide financial support for the Simi Valley Cultural Arts Center. But it says that it's not part of the city, but we get to appoint 7 of the members. And I'm trying to understand, how do you reconcile that? How do you reconcile that they're separate, but yet we get to appoint people to the foundation? So it feels like it's conflicting. So I'm trying to understand why, why if they're separate, we're appointing them.
Well, we don't have a majority of the board members. Of the 21 seats, they have allotted 7 to the city to appoint. So because it is a city building and actually run by the city, it was set up so the city would have some input in it, but not the majority input. So that's when it was created back in the mid-90s, I guess is when it was. It was allowed for the city to have the input but not have control.
I'm trying to reconcile that because I don't see that in any of the other foundations. Like there's other foundations, like the Simi Educators Foundation supports the schools, but the school board does not appoint any of the members of the foundation.
Maybe I could add, I have seen in other cities where when a new project like a cultural arts center is set up, that the city or a county will set up the impetus for an outside board and reserve seats on it. And I have examined some of the documents at the beginning of this, and I think that's how that happened. In addition, some financing, I believe, was provided by the city. So I think it's a legacy of that time. That's pretty much what the city manager said. But I have seen it in other cities as well, so it's not unheard of to have this sort of kickstart, and then the city retains some seats.
Have we given funds through the community, or any city funds, or through the community develop, through the CDBG or any other city funds, through any grants, or including the general fund, to the Simi Valley Cultural Arts Center Foundation? Ever?
Ever's a long time. Yeah.
You've been here a long time, Brian.
Yeah. I don't know if we've ever done any. We haven't done any community development, community project grants. The only other funds that we would give would be community development block grant funds. So it would just.
Have we given those to the foundation?
I don't believe so.
No.
We've only given the special event. The only there's 3 pots that we would give money out to the community. Community development block grant, which this has not received money for that I'm aware of. The community project grants that this hasn't received money for, and the special event grants that the foundation has received money for to help support their fundraising efforts.
Okay, and therein is the issue, exactly. that we are appointing, even if it's not a majority, we are appointing people to an entity that we are also giving funding to through as a city council, and that just seems like a conflict to me. So I would rather that if they are a separate, if they truly are, as this report says, a separate 501c3 nonprofit organization, that they actually be a separate 501c3 nonprofit organization, and that we not appoint city council
Councilmember
members there.
Lovnos, we're hearing you, but you have to realize that this 501c3, we don't control. It is usually their bylaws that dictate how that is separated, where they're going to have their different peoples are elected from and appointed
Right,
from.
so why don't we just separate completely?
They have chosen, and it makes sense, since we control and own the Cultural Arts Center, since we employ the person that runs that, since we also have a commission that helps with programming and various things, there's nothing wrong with having some conversation with the group that raises funds for it. But it really is up to that foundation to decide whether or not they want our participation. They could come forward and say, they could come forward and vote and say, you know, we don't want cities' involvement anymore, and so we only are going to go down to 14. They have that right. You referenced, for instance, the Education Foundation, et cetera. You should know that on the Ed Foundation, there are two council or two board members from the Simi Valley Unified District who happen to sit on that at this time. It is not uncommon to have people with knowledge of something to be involved.
But are they chosen by the school board? Does the school board say, we get to choose
Their
this many
bylaws
people?
don't articulate that, but in this case, I would assume that the foundation bylaws articulate from whence they draw their board. They can choose to change it at any time. We don't have the authority to change that. Of course, we could choose to not offer them, to give them support, but I think at this moment, we are discussing whether or not we're going to ratify 3 people, and I'd like to make a motion that we so do so. And if this is of concern to you, then later in 9B, you can go ahead and make a motion that we revisit that. But I think it is worthwhile at this moment that we ratify and approve these 3 outstanding people.
I'm just trying to bring forth transparency and accountability for an item that is on the agenda, so I know that it's appropriate to discuss it. And I brought it up before in terms of, you know, is it a separate, and it's in the report, is it a separate 501c3 nonprofit or not? If it's controlled by this, if we have input over it, then there's a direct conflict of interest when funding is given that we approve to the foundation.
That funding is recommended by a committee that is not part of this council, correct?
But that we have a say over.
Right, but they recommend it without our input. We just approve their recommendations. So to me, that's, we're separate enough.
I think, hold on one, excuse me. I think we'd be better served if we go ahead and follow through with the motion, and then if we want to continue the discussion on the structure, we could do that. City Attorney, can we continue that discussion after we do the vote?
The discussion is relevant to the item. So although it is unusual to keep discussing, as long as you're on topic with the item, I suppose that you can. Yes, you can. As long as you're on topic with how that relates to the point of these people, you could, if you wish, continue that discussion.
Well, then based on what you're saying, then I think it's only fair to let Councilmember Webenos continue with what.
Yeah, it seems to be legally permissible. You can, as long as it's on this, roughly on this topic.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It just seems like, I just don't see it. If people here that work for the city or even the city council who want to apply for the foundation, want to, they can. Just like you mentioned, Councilwoman Lister, that, you know, there can be people that can apply for that foundation. But it just seems like we did set up the Simi Valley Cultural Arts Center. We do, you know, we have 2 city council members, I believe, that serve on the commission. Is that correct, Mr. Gablin?
On the commission.
That's correct.
So we do have some control over what happens at the Simi Cultural Arts Center. It just seems like when it comes to the fundraising, you know, why are we being involved in that? If that's not something that we're doing. We run the Simi Valley Cultural Arts Center. In terms of the fundraising for the Simi Cultural Arts Center, then that's different. That should be a separate entity. If this report is correct, if they really are a separate nonprofit organization. I understand that we helped set it up so that it could be, you know, so it could run itself, but I just don't see the reason for us to continue to be involved in it now, this many years later, and for us to have a third of the members that are involved with the fundraising for the Simi Valley Cultural Arts Center. It seems like it should be a separate entity. The senior center, it seems more separate than this entity does. So I'm just trying to figure out why we are continuing down this path if we don't, we only had 4 applicants for 4 people who applied for 3 positions. It just seems like there's too much of a conflict of interest here in terms of funding. And when it came to the CDBG grants, this was one of the issues that was brought up because, they hadn't met the requirements that were required for the CDBG grants, for the grant that was requested. And we just let it slide because we said, oh, we're so involved with the Simi Valley Cultural Arts Center Foundation, we're just going to let it slide and we'll throw away the rule book. So, I would like for them to be held at the same standard as other separate entities, as other foundations who do apply for grants through the city. All I'm asking for is transparency, accountability, and now's the point in time at which we can say, okay, we're going to have that accountability, and they really are going to be a separate nonprofit, and we're not going to stick our hands in this honeypot. That's what I'm asking for.
Does any of the other council members wish to?
I would like to speak.
Okay.
They are a separate 501c3, but we own the building. We pay all the employees that work there. We are not directly giving that foundation money. We are recommending people to sit on their board to help them raise money so they can put on the cultural events that they do. Any funding that we have given them from the dais has been under recommendation from somebody completely separate from the council and from that foundation. So I'm very comfortable with the way it's set up today.
Well, I would make a motion that we should not have the ability to appoint people to a foundation that should be operating truly independently of the city. That's my motion.
Okay, one moment. We have a motion. Would you withdraw your motion and then we can?
I can withdraw it, but I'd also like to comment specifically about that.
Sure.
I want to reiterate that because it is a separate 501c3 corporation, we do not control their bylaws. We do not run that foundation. I would assume, now we could ask to see their bylaws, I would assume in the bylaws it articulates 14 people are elected through this process, we want 7 people being nominated through the city. It is for them to determine whether or not they would like the city to recommend people or not. They could come to us and say because the foundation controls it, it is separate and they have certainly the voting majority. They could easily say, we've changed the makeup of our board, we want you to nominate 1 person, or we don't want any nominations. But I don't think it is for us to say that we want the makeup of their board changed. Obviously, we have the right to say, no, we're going to send anymore. You're correct, we could choose to do that. But in my mind, that decision should be generated from the board because I assume they appreciate the input that we are in terms of manpower to help in fundraising, because fundraising is a huge project. I would assume that is of benefit to the foundation. Now, maybe ultimately, maybe we need to hear from the foundation president themselves or the.
Can you not see the?
One second.
Okay.
I think that's a good point, and you also have to look at the staff time that goes into preparing everything for these interviews. I mean, there's a lot that the city does in the way of. It's not monetary turning over, but I'm sure it's saving somebody at least time. And so there's a great deal that goes into this, and I tend to agree with you. Their board, if they don't want us to participate any longer, that board needs to come to us and tell us that.
And Mayor, I'm glad you made that point because that's all the more reason why the city should have a hands-off approach to this. If it's more work for our city staff, which has been slashed year and year and year again by not hiring the people that have left, all the more reason why we should take this burden off of our staff and say, hey, you don't have to do this anymore. They are truly an independent 501c3 nonprofit, and this is not something that you have to set up, and it's not to be unappreciative of the staff that has set up the interview process. But it is to say, if this is something that's independent, then there's no need for us to get involved or to place another burden on our already overburdened city staff. And so this is yet another reason why we need to not be involved in this. There is a perception of impropriety that we as a city control, even though it's not a majority. When we have the right, we reserve the right to appoint 7 board members to this foundation when we're already involved on the commission. So I understand the argument about, you know, we need to be involved. We are involved in the commission. There's 2 city council members. We have input on the programming that happens at the Simi Valley Cultural Arts Center. But in terms of the fundraising, we don't need to be involved in that. That's something that we do not need to place as an extra burden on our already overburdened city staff. Let them be truly independent, and let's not have a hand in it, because anyone else looking into our city says, oh yeah, the city controls the foundation because they get to appoint 7 board members to the Simi Valley Cultural Arts Foundation. Anybody else from the outside sees that.
Councilmember Luevnos, I believe what I heard the attorney say is that this is not unusual, that there are other entities, that it is not uncommon for the city to nominate to foundations.
Councilmember and Council, I was basing that on my experience in San Diego and Los Angeles, where I did see in those cities commissions that had this nature. I cannot
Commissions
vouch.
or foundations, because there's a difference. We already have input with the commission.
That became 501c3s that retained board seats from the city or county that helped originate them. I cannot give you statistics in the state how common it might be, but I certainly have seen it. So I don't believe that it is, my impression is not so unusual that it is a red flag of any sort. But obviously the council can change the relationship with a private 501c3 at any time by stating, we want to participate in this way. And then the board of that would have to react to that. If that's what you wish to do.
Does the city face any liability by being involved with having a third of the board members appointed by us?
Probably very little. There's a very little liability.
But there is a likelihood of liability.
There might, I mean, on the one hand, there's some slight liability in appointing somebody should something go wrong somehow. I'm talking really theoretical. On the other hand, by having city involvement, that might also reduce liability to some degree because the city is closer tied. So I can't tell you definitively either way about liability, but it's not a high liability for sure. It's very, very theoretical. So.
And I would just like to remind Councilmember Luevnos that the commission and the foundation are 2 totally different things. The commission helps with programming and the vision and a variety of things. The foundation strictly is about raising funds to allow these programs to go on. And it behooves the city to make sure that foundation is really successful, because if they fail in their mission to raise funds, then because we own the building and the structure, we have an even larger and larger liability and responsibility. So if it is of help to them that we offer people to assist in that process, all we're doing is benefiting the entire city and the entire arts program. I don't see that in any way. If anything, all we're doing is being helpful. But they, of course, can come to us and say otherwise that they don't want that help.
Do we have a line item in the general budget for the Simi Valley Cultural Arts Center?
Yes, it is included in our budget.
So we're already supporting the Simi Valley Cultural Arts Center.
We do, however, the revenue and money coming in from the foundation, okay, Yolanda, it covers the cost of the running the center. Is that correct? 1.5 positions. Okay.
So we're already financially supporting the
So
Simi
the
Valley.
foundation is doing tremendous benefit to the city, is what I'm hearing.
It does provide financial support.
If your only concern is that we gave them money, when it comes time to do those grants again, we can look at that in that we don't give that to them in the future, because that seems to be your only concern. So that would be not a problem with me. I don't feel we need to go to the Cultural Arts Foundation and ask them to change their bylaws at this point in time. If they discuss this and decide they don't want city input, then they can come to us. But at this point in time, that's how their bylaws are set, and that's what we're trying to do, and give them support, which they need. We're able to do the advertising for them. We're able to do the interviewing for them. We're able to give them quality people that they may or may not have been able to outreach to. So I think we're doing a great job on this.
But is this a burden that our staff needs to bear, that our city staff needs to bear? If they're a separate entity, they should be a separate entity. We have city business that we need to take care of, that our staff needs to take care of. If this is one less load that our city staff has to bear, then we need to do that. We need to do that. Be conscious of what we ask our city employees to do, and whether or not it promotes the mission of the city.
I believe supporting arts and creativity and the mission of beautifying our neighborhood and all that the Cultural Arts Foundation and Commission does is very important to the city's mission. And so I see no problem in supporting the arts in our community. I think that's an important endeavor for the city to do.
If we were thriving economically, I would not disagree with you. But the fact is that we are in an economic downturn. We are facing a huge pandemic of global and epic proportions. We have fires all around us. We have seniors that are needing cooling centers and other people that are vulnerable that need staff to be doing those kinds of things, promoting the safety and health of our residents. And while I promote the arts, and as a former musician myself, I promote the arts and I understand the value in the arts, and I'm not devaluing the arts in any way. I'm just saying this is not, if it's a separate entity, this is not a burden that we should be placing on our city staff.
I was the one that brought up the city staff. I've never heard city staff complain and say they've overworked. Back from my viewpoint, I see that they do a lot of work.
I've never complained to my principal that I'm overworked, but that doesn't deny the fact that I am.
I'm sorry?
I've never complained to my principal that I'm overworked, but that doesn't deny the fact that I am.
Okay, well, I'm not sure about that, but I'm just saying that my comments were that the staff does a great job and they're part of it, and I think it assists the overall operation of the Cultural Arts Center, which the city has a tremendous interest in. And we want to keep that interest, and we want to keep it healthy. And by our little involvement in the selecting of people, I think it would tend to, this may, not that anybody has done a bad job in there, I'm not saying that at all, but I think by having the diversity of the people choosing the people that are going to serve on that board, it better serves the Cultural Arts Center, because you get a wide variety of people that are reaching out into the public and reaching out for contributions. And I think that in itself is very healthy. It's healthy for the city. It's healthy for the Cultural Arts Center. And we get the benefit of having our staff help out. And I think at this time, what I'm going to ask is, would you please withdraw your motion for temporarily?
Sure, I will withdraw my motion then.
And then would you restate your motion, Councilmember Luevanos?
Yes, I move that that the City Council no longer nominate people to the Simi Valley Cultural Arts Center Foundation Board, and we allow them to be a truly separate entity.
You have a motion, need a second? Okay, hearing none. Clerk?
Motion fails due to lack of a second.
Okay. All right, the other motion?
I'd like to motion that we approve these three names to be appointed to the Simi Valley Cultural Arts Foundation.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Call for the vote.
Please vote yes for me.
Okay.
The motion passes with Councilmember Luevanos abstaining.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, we do not have any special presentations or informational reports. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next item on the agenda is public hearings. This is a time for testimony on public hearings on consideration of matters as presented on this agenda. Let the record show that due notice was given as required by law, and an affidavit to this effect is in file in the office of the city clerk. There were no public testimony received for this item 4. Also, please note all land use public hearings are currently postponed due to the county stay well at home order and to ensure an appropriate opportunity for public input. Agenda item 4A, a public hearing to consider amendments to the Simi Valley Municipal Code Z-S-753 of Title 8 and Title 9 related to electric vehicle charging stations. A determination that the amendments are exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, and an introduction of an ordinance. The reading of the ordinance is as follows. Ordinance number 1312, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Simi Valley for Z-S-753, amending portions of Title 8 by adding a new Chapter 25 and Title 9 by adding new Section 9-44, 185, and 9-76040D of the Simi Valley Municipal Code related to electric vehicle charging stations, and a determination that the amendments are exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act. And Claudia Pedroso is here for this presentation.
Oral report.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. As the city clerk indicated, this is a state-mandated code adoption change we're presenting to you tonight regarding electric vehicle charging stations. The goal is to remove any potential obstacles, encourage their implementation. Joining to meet me tonight is our building official, Ted Drago, who's here to provide any technical questions. And making her first presentation here with the City Council is one of our newest hires, Principal Planner Claudia Pedroso. Claudia has worked in other jurisdictions here in the Ventura County for over 20 years. She's a licensed architect, and she brings a lot of experience in economic development, management, and current planning. So we're very grateful to have her on board the team, and we'll have her make the presentation tonight. Claudia?
Thank you, Mr. Berger. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council.
Sorry about that. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. The request in front of you is I'm sorry, I'm going to wait a second. Lucy, can you get the PowerPoint? Or I'll just continue on. The request for your consideration is an ordinance that amends portions of the Title 8 and Title 9 of the Simi Valley Municipal Code related to the installation of electric charging stations. There has been a significant growth in sales of electric vehicles in California. In the first half of 2019, sales of new electric vehicles rose about 64%, and plug-in hybrid vehicles rose about 22%. California's goal is to have 5 million zero-emission vehicles by 2030 and about 250,000 electric vehicle charging stations by 2025. Thus, they need to provide a streamlined process for the installation of electric vehicle charging stations. Assembly Bill 1236, as codified by the state government code, requires local jurisdictions to adopt new ordinances that will help streamline the review process for the electric vehicle charging stations. The city already provides expedited processing with some over-the-counter approvals, but the new government code establishes additional requirements and processing for the charging stations applications. I actually have some graphics that I was going to show you, but we'll pass on that. Imagine a charging station. So the new regulations require commercial facilities to be installed in existing surface parking lots or parking structures, with the charging station be situated at the parking space. It also requires accessory equipment that has to be properly sited and also screened. And also, in addition, there are other requirements for signage. Likewise, for residential installations, the new regulation requires for charging stations to be located inside a garage for a single-family dwelling, or in the case of multi-family buildings, for these facilities to be installed on the surface parking or on a parking structure, but also be situated at the parking spaces. In this case also, the accessory equipment has to be properly sited and screened, and we have requirements for signage as well. We researched other cities as well as the Office of the Planning Research Guidebook, which were used for reference in preparing this ordinance. The proposed ordinance provides for streamlining procedures while addressing potential adverse impacts to health and safety. It also provides a checklist for levels 1, 2, and fast charging stations. As long as the proposed facility meets these requirements, the application can be processed within 7 working days using online checklists and submittals. It is recommended that the City Council introduce this ordinance amending portions of Title 8 and 9 of the Simi Valley Municipal Code regarding the streamlined process for electric vehicle charging stations to conform with the state regulations and to determine that the amendments are exempt from CEQA.
This concludes the staff presentation, and we're available for questions.
Questions?
I think Elaine had her hand up first. Her finger, I can't tell. Go ahead, Elaine.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Lister, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Just a couple quick questions. If I understand correctly, basically this means a single residence does not have to apply for the upgrades or for the changes. They, as long as they go through the requirements, they can do so without actually having to apply for a permit. Is that correct? Am I understanding this correctly?
In actuality, you do need a building permit. What we're saying with this code is that as long as you meet certain requirements, you can just go straight to your building permit application. If you don't comply with some of these requirements, then you have to go through a use permit, basically planning review. For example, if you have an equipment that is not in a safe location and is blocking traffic view, what have you, then we have them. We're probably going to impose some kind of conditions to relocate that equipment. In the case of a single-family residence, is as long as you meet the requirements, you can just come in and do basically an over-the-counter permit.
Gotcha. Okay, so you still have to get the permit, but
Yes.
it just goes directly to that process. Thank
Yes.
you. And I guess my second question, this goes to what I read on page 10. Basically, if I read it correctly, charging stations can never be not denied except for safety. And I wondered, for instance, what if it was like a historically significant property and it didn't fit the historical context of what was going on there? I mean, is there any other reason that you can deny a charging station, or is basically we're putting into codifying that the only exception is safety? Did I read that correctly?
Technically, yes, and basically, again, like the example that I gave for if you have equipment that is not in a correct location, then we're going to, deny that application or go through a use permit.
But it couldn't be done, for instance, because it didn't fit the historical significance, or if it...
Historical significance is part of it, yeah.
Or aesthetically, I mean, you couldn't be turned down for those reasons. Is that correct?
Historically, you could. For aesthetics, no.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Ruth.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I was curious, on page 2, it says that there's a specific expedited timeline for permit approval, and so I just want to make sure, do we have staff for this? Do we need to train staff for this? Are we ready for this?
I would like to say, we are building officials here. You can clarify if I don't get this 100% right, but we currently do this already.
Okay.
Despite this law being passed, we have done a very good job on expediting these. This kind of puts in our code, which is a requirement, but we are very quick on turning these around, like most of our plan checks here at the city. And so the 7-day window that we have is quite easy for us to meet.
Okay, my other question was, it said that when it's set up, I'm on page 10 of the report, it says a permit application for level 1 or level 2 EVCS installation of single-family dwelling garage where such dwellings within the title need not use the adopted checklist. And then if you skip down a couple lines, it says, but alternatively may submit a complete EVCS electrical permit application eligible for in-person, over-the-counter issuance or electronic submittal issuance. And so I'm curious, are we set up for electronic submittal issuance because we're still in the middle of a pandemic dealing with COVID? Do we have that set up yet, or will we have it set up so that, since City Hall isn't open yet, that people can do that?
Yeah, so we are actually in the InterGov implementation system where we're expected to go live. I think it's about October 1st is what we're targeting. But yeah, we are currently working for this type of permit and all type of permits to do it. And so we are currently taking a lot of applications, whether it's mail-in, over-the-counter, or other sorts of electronic submittals already. And we are expecting to take another step forward with the InterGov implementation.
Okay, I have a couple other questions. This is on page 11, and I know, and Claudio, welcome to Simi Valley, City of Simi Valley. Welcome to our wonderful city here. I was curious as to, you mentioned that you have to have a garage or a structure, so like you wanted to set up in your backyard, like you say we do have some residents who have very large lots, they have, half-acre lots and stuff. They couldn't just set it up in the backyard, they have to have a structure. It has to be enclosed in a structure, is that correct?
The requirement that we have, that it has to be inside the garage. If you want to go outside the garage, you're going to have to go through a use permit. It
Okay,
won't
so if they
be-
have like a barn and they say, we're going to set it up in the barn and it's like a garage, but it looks like a barn, would that count or no?
I guess the answer will be an enclosed. It will be inside where it's not seen from outside and it cannot. I believe what they're trying to avoid is having that you put it on the side of your house and now the whole neighborhood is plugging into that.
Okay.
So that's why they're making the reference to the inside of the garage or inside a structure could potentially work. We'll probably treat it on a case-by-case basis.
I know we're supposed to use our garages for cars, but a lot of people use them for storage instead of the cars, so that's why I'm asking. My other question is, it talked about having electrical vehicle charging stations for public use, and it talked about making sure that it's easily seen, where I'm on page 11, for public informational security purposes and will be illuminated during evening business hours. I know people that own electric vehicles who will charge them overnight, because they use it during the day. So, how would that work if it's outside? Because there's also mention here several times about, you want to minimize potential damage by vandalism. So if it's outside, like if you're in an apartment complex and the parking is outside, would that meet the needs of this ordinance, so that if they've set up electric charging stations outside in the parking lot, and they charge it overnight, would there have to be illumination there at night? I'm looking at the cost to people installing it and, whether or not they would want to incur that cost or not, and the safety and meeting the vandalism issue. So I'm trying to see how this, indoors it's not an issue, but outdoors I'm trying to see, how that would look like for landlords.
So for multifamily projects, you potentially will have either a parking structure or surface parking, and our security ordinance requires to have illumination levels, so it will be illuminated. And so that will be both for the commercial, the residential, and I believe probably in commercial that it's going to be parked overnight. So it will be just on the residential facilities that you will have, overnight parking for electric charging.
Okay, and do we have any plans in this ordinance to have, I know they're like the Northridge Mall has, charging stations so you can go to the mall, go shopping while your car charges. Are there any plans to do that at our mall or in any of our commercial areas? Would this help that happen?
Yeah. We've been approached by different companies over the years to put in those sorts of pedestals that you might have seen at some of the Whole Food Market and what have you. It's allowed at our mall, and if they would like to do it there, they're more than welcome. You may have heard that there is a Tesla charging stations area coming. It'll be at the Target located near Madera Rajada, and they're going to be locating in a portion of the parking lot. And so that one is in the pipeline, and hopefully will be operating fairly soon here. So we are encouraging it at our town center as well as other shopping centers throughout the city.
Okay, and I would ask that you consider having, in Northridge Mall, it's like one of the closest parking spots. So people are like, oh, look, if you have an EV vehicle, you can park right next to the, the Cinnabon entrance. So I know that, believe it or not, that's an incentive for people to get electrical vehicles. And it also helps meet our renewable energy load that California is requiring us to have within the next, several years, all renewable energy. So, if that's a consideration that can be thought about when, when they install these, to have them, closer, not way in the back, in the corner where no one sees it, or, but that it would be kind of a perk, right, to have an electric vehicle.
Yeah, we have nothing in the rules to prevent them from doing that, but sometimes these are landlord-leasee sort of arrangements where the landlord may want them in a particular location, but we're not driving where they can or can't be. But it does make sense to put them near the store entrance so people can go in quite easily.
And is this part of the conversation for the planning development of the Planning Commission in terms of electrical vehicle charging stations for new developments? Would this apply to any, like if there's something that hasn't started yet but it's in the pipeline to be approved, would this ordinance apply to them?
This is going to be citywide, yeah. So it'll apply as soon as we adopt it. So if a project comes online after this ordinance has been adopted, yeah, it'll apply to them as well.
Okay, so if it's already been approved, and then we pass this ordinance, like say tonight or in the next meeting, then that means it would apply to someone that's already building, or it wouldn't apply?
Yeah, this ordinance is an incentive. We're trying to streamline the process. We're not mandating it be on any particular project. So if somebody wants to come in, the ordinance will be in place so they can get right in, right out, and get their devices installed.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Quick question. There were these devices at the, what was, Mervyn's, Walmart, Elizabeth, Carquin there, Sycamore.
Yes.
Are those remaining?
They are still there.
Are they?
Yep.
Are they usable?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. All right, that's just a sidebar question.
That's fine.
Okay, Mayor, I move to introduce an ordinance amending portions of Title 8 and Title 9 of the Simi Valley Municipal Code related to electric vehicle charging stations to conform to the State of California Government Code Section 65850.7 and determine that the amendments are exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second. Oh, sorry, first reading.
I guess it's not necessary to have a vote on it.
So, it was in the report.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next item on the agenda is Agenda Item 5. This is a time for public statements on all items other than public hearings, appointments, and information reports.
Oh, pardon me, I'm sorry. And I may have just missed it. Was there any record of public comment for that hearing item?
No, there were no public testimony received for a 4.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
This is the time for public statements on all items other than public hearings, appointments, and information reports. All comments submitted by email prior to 12 p.m. noon today were provided to the City Council and will be made part of the record. However, they will not be read by the City Clerk at the meeting. Comments received by email after 12 p.m. noon today, up until the beginning of this public statement item on the agenda, will now be read for a period of 30 minutes, spending 3 minutes on each email. Every effort will be made to read all emails into the record, but some emails may not be read due to time limitations. Emails received after the beginning of public statements or unread emails will be made part of the record if received after the end of the meeting. City Council members may offer a response to the extent possible under Agenda Item 5A. Mr. Mayor, unless you have any comments, we will begin reading the emails. And we have about 20 emails.
Okay, thank you.
The first email is from Pam Campau. Dear Mayor and Council members, I attended the Cops and Tops Parade last Saturday. It was overwhelmingly exciting to see so much of our diverse community come together to support our Simi Valley Police Department. What a breath of fresh air this year to participate in an event that showed the community inclusiveness and great resident support that we have come to know for many years in our fine city. Our police department deserves the respect that they have earned over the years, and now under the great leadership of Police Chief Livingstone, one of the reasons I moved to Simi Valley from Los Angeles was because of its safe environment where I could raise my family without fear. Let's not use the initial excuse of the Rodney King trial that really had nothing to do with us except to be moved from Los Angeles to our court location, tear down our great city. In the future, let's join together again in a positive spirit like we did on Saturday. With the nation's lockdown and all of the fears that we do have facing us, let's work together and make this city even better for us and our families. Seems to make sense to me, doesn't it to you? I ask that our mayor and council members sign the attached citizen proclamation and read it into the record in support of the Simi Valley Police Department, who daily defend the wonderful quality of life we have in Simi Valley. Thank you. Respectfully, Pam Campau. The next one, William Klepper. Just curious for the record, does anybody know the exact number of human resource complaints that Ruth Luevanos has filed against staff, fellow council members, and police officers? None of which have been found to be valid. Generally, at most organizations, if you have an employee abusing the Human Resource Department for systematic harassment with imaginary claims, That would be some self-imposed shame or firing by the organization. Or maybe counseling is needed in Ruth's case because of her need to always seek out attention and to create chaos. Counseling hotlines are open 24 hours, so if Ruth extends a city council meeting unnecessarily tonight, like she always does, just to hear herself verbalize, she can call right after the meeting is over, no matter the time. Let me know if the toll-free number is needed. William Klepper. Linda Tran. The 8720 Acorn says, July 22nd, in the 200 block of East Cochran Street, a 32-year-old man was cited for possessing heroin. On July 23rd, a 24-year-old woman and a 25-year-old man were cited for petty theft and possessing heroin in the 2900 block of East Cochran Street. Both were citations for possessing heroin, historically a white person's drug, especially considering Simi's reputation as a heroin town. Not one more being made of white mothers, all while having the demographics of a primarily white suburb. On July 26, at Cordo Street and Royal Avenue, a 49-year-old man was arrested for driving under the influence and for possessing cocaine. I agree with the DUI charge. That's not okay. Objectively, cocaine is punished more harshly than heroin, which I don't agree with. If we're talking about solely drug possession, the discrepancy still exists. See the July 24th issue of the Acorn? July 7th, a man, 39, was arrested in the 2300 block of Cooner Drive for possessing cocaine, versus July 10th, a man, 29, was cited for possessing heroin at Simi Town Center Way and Erringer Road. Why is there such a difference? Heroin is a white person's drug, while cocaine is primarily reason that Black or Latinx communities are over-policed. There are laws about certain drugs requiring an arrest. However, lawmakers and policemen should think critically about why this discrepancy exists, which furthers the historic and current war against drugs. Jen M.J. Good evening, Mayor Mashburn, Mayor Pro Tem Judge, Councilwoman Lister, Councilwoman Kavanaugh, and Councilwoman Luevanos. My name is Jennifer Jones, and I'm a resident of Simi Valley. I had the opportunity to participate in the Simi Valley Police Appreciation Car Parade on Saturday, August 22nd, 2020. There was a huge, diverse group of community residents that turned out to support our police. Everyone had their cars decorated to show how much we love Simi PD. I support our police, and I'm requesting the mayor and council execute, sign, and read into the record the attached proclamation. Thank you for taking the time to listen to what I have to say. Sincerely, Jennifer Jones. Joe Pachowski, Mayor Mashburn, and members of the City Council. On Saturday, I watched the best side of Simi Valley as more than 1,200 people took time from their day to come out and participate in a car parade celebrating the Simi Valley Police Department. It was overwhelming. The entire City Hall parking lot filled up with cars of the participants, and there were so many cars that some participants had to be directed to park in the Senior Center parking lot. Everyone was able to remain socially distant by staying in their cars with their family members. As someone who volunteered to help with the event, I got to see many of the participants, and it was encouraging to see the diversity of the residents who turned out. To me, this is exactly what our city is about. In closing, I'd like to encourage each of you to sign the Citizens Proclamation and pledge to oppose the defunding of the Simi Valley Police Department or the diversion of public safety money and personnel for social welfare purposes, which I have attached. I also ask that the City Council have this proclamation be read into record in its entirety. Thank you. Joe Pachowski, Wood Ranch. And he has attached the proclamation, I guess, that everybody's talking about in the emails. Alan Mann, to the Mayor of Simi Valley, City Council of Simi Valley, staff for the City of Simi Valley, and to the entire community of Simi Valley. I recently attended the Police Appreciation Parade, and I was overwhelmed with the enthusiasm of the participants. The participants were there to send a message that they all support our police. The cars in the parade were as diverse as the drivers and the spectators were. Either young, old, male or female, white, black, brown, and everything in between, we all had one common agenda: to support our police. The crowd waved American flags as the many and various cars and drivers left the City Hall parking lot for a short but important parade to the police station. Several of the crowd returned to the City Hall parking lot for fellowship and to show off their cars. This was a great community event. The attendance at the parade clearly demonstrated that our community stands behind our police department and its officers. Now is the time for our City Council to publicly do the same and sign the attached proclamation demonstrating our city's leadership support for our police department. I would also ask that this proclamation be read into the minutes as well. Sincerely, Alan C. Mann. Carol Thomeyer. I have lived in Simi Valley since 1979 and love this town, the citizenry, and especially our dedicated law enforcement. Please keep the SVPD and SV residents' safety top priority. A resident with a family here in SV. Sincerely, Carol Thomeyer. Paula Marie Young. To the council members and mayor of Simi Valley, I have lived in this wonderful city for over 35 years and appreciate the police force we have. The K-9 unit came to my son's school and did a wonderful job showing all the students that police are your protectors and friends. The proclamation shows publicly that we in Simi Valley love and care about our police. Please show our support. Do not defund them. Aaron Garth. Ruth, why, when you say you want to bring us together, but all you do is separate everyone by race? Why do you think everyone is either a victim or a racist? Why do you hate Simi Valley? I have never heard you talk about what a great place this is. You always complain. Thomas Anderson. Why has Mike Judge not been around? Is he afraid of the goons that might attack him outside of City Hall? Mike, you have more support than you know. You are the silent majority. Trump 2020. Brett G. Can anyone name a city that is run by Democrats that has improved in the last 50 years? Democrats and liberals such as Newsom, Garcetti, Luevanos have done nothing to improve the cities and states that they run. Newsom turned San Francisco into a hellhole with his homeless and poop. Garcetti has done the same thing. If we are not careful, Ruth will do the same thing for Simi. I get it, they are doing it under the guise of being fair or just trying to help those who are down on their luck. The truth is this country is the most fair, just, and has brought more people out of poverty than any other in the history of the world. Don't let Simi become Los Angeles or San Francisco. Recall Ruth or just vote her out next time. Paula Marie Young. The police are terrific. Please vote yes on the proclamation. The officer that works at the school is so nice and approachable. The K-9 unit came to my daughter's school and did a great job during the DARE program. Please do not defund the police. We need them. I was so happy to see the large amount of cars that came to the parade last Saturday. We Simi Valley residents appreciate our police, and I wonder if some of the complaints are from outsiders trying to hurt our city. Paula Young. Lucille Fuqua. To the council members and the mayor of Simi Valley, I have lived in the city for over 50 years and appreciate the police. Please adopt this proclamation. The K-9 unit is terrific and attends Boy Scout events, school events, and does a good job educating kids about police. The proclamation shows publicly that we in Simi Valley love and care about our police. Do not let these outside forces sway you. You are under attack. Do not defund the police. We are Simi strong. Carol Sherman. To the mayor and City Council members of Simi Valley. I have lived in Simi Valley more than 50 years and have only good things to say about our police. The men and women in the department are the best and are appreciated and well respected. It was wonderful to see so many residents participate in the pro-police parade on Saturday. Please vote yes on the proclamation to show we love and care about our police. Do not defund them. The complaints I hear about make me wonder if non-Simi Valley residents are trying to hurt our wonderful city. Thank you. Kyle Ballard. Hello, my name is Kyle Ballard. I am a lifelong resident of Simi Valley and want us to strive to be the best city we can be. That being said, the empty words and lack of action and reform is concerning to say the least. Instead of listening to your constituents, sharing their experiences of systematic racism in earnest, you double down on your own sentiments that Simi Valley is a great place, insinuating there is nothing to be done here. While I am proud of my neighbors speaking out about injustices in our community, I am equally disappointed by you, our elected officials, who have refused to take any real action to back up your empty words. Time and time again, you protect Mike Judge from any repercussions from his actions and violent, hateful rhetoric. Just because he made his profile private, that doesn't change his repeat offenses to the council's code of conduct. Censor Mike Judge. It's time for Simi Valley to take action for the betterment of everyone in our community. Black Lives Matter. Kyle Ballard. Jessica Freeman. Dear Simi Valley City Council members, the following is being submitted in response to agenda item number 2 to subject City Council meetings. I have lived in this wonderful city for over 60 years and appreciate living in a place where I can feel safe. This safe feeling is in no small measure due to the dedicated members of the Simi Valley Police Department. It should go without having to mount a massive letter-writing campaign to prove that the citizens of Simi Valley need and want a devoted, responsive, hardworking, wonderful police department. The proclamation presented in agenda item number 2 speaks to the seriousness that we take to show the council and the police department that this is a true fact, despite those seeking to discredit the department. Do not even entertain the idea of defunding, even in the smallest amount, the Simi Valley Police Department, submitted by Jessica Freeman. Colleen Airy. To the city's council and mayor of the city of Simi Valley. We moved in Simi Valley in 1988, 32 years ago. My husband and I have raised our 4 children from infancy to adulthood in this fine city. On more than one occasion, it was necessary to contact the police department for issues involving neighborhood crime, traffic control, and even a police drive-by for a youth who couldn't celebrate his birthday with a party in the early weeks of COVID-19 lockdown. A finer police force would be extremely difficult to find anywhere. Simi Valley has been blessed by good weather, low crime rates, and super protective police department. If our police force were to disappear, well, we shudder to think of any neighborhood without someone whom citizens can rely upon to protect their lives and property. This is a fundamental right of all citizens of this magnificent country. My husband and I are grateful for the selfless service rendered by our local police force here in Simi Valley. Do not let those persons who incite trouble and foment dissolving institutions in favor of tearing down what works very well to have any influence upon this council. Please support our time-tested system of law enforcement, our local police. Respectfully, Paul and Colleen Avery. Flo Ward. I'm a 20-year resident of Simi Valley, and I have enjoyed the peace and quiet of this city's community. When first deciding to move here from the San Fernando Valley, I heard about the city's fine police department, who truly had the best interest of keeping it safe and protect it from would-be criminals. I almost had a devastating, accosting-type experience in Winnetka, California, before moving here, and thank goodness I was able to dodge and get away from this lewd character. I love the family-type neighborhood feeling in all of Simi Valley, as I've moved around a lot in the last 10 years. The confidence of feeling we're in an oasis type of environment of otherwise criminal-laden activity as in other cities can only be accredited to the wonderful police department. We have and can depend on them to come to the scene of difficulty in a very quick period of time and lend all reasoning of professional expertise to the issue at hand. Even my one time getting a traffic ticket was a pleasant experience. I'm writing this message to you for your complete and very discerned consideration for signing the proclamation before you, and that we will all want to keep our police department, as we know it under all circumstances, will not defund them, but support them every which way we can. Thank you very much. Flo Ward. Delaney Moss. While I appreciate the pending honorary resolution in celebration of Juneteenth, it's not enough. The resolution that disavowed Mike Judge's actions was not enough. He deserved to be censored and have his committee assignments stripped. This council has not done enough to promote accountability and anti-racism. To correct this, please listen to Council Member Luevanos when she tries to share her stories. Please assert yourselves as anti-racist so that your constituents will actually feel comfortable with coming forward and sharing their stories with you. Hold each other accountable. Take more action in standing against racism. Create a committee that strives to combat racism and educate others within our community. Please do literally anything, because your words in the resolution frankly mean nothing. Thank you. This is from Robbie Hidalgo. It's a request for action regarding a proposed supplement to DES Order Number 1, providing temporary commercial and residential relief to the COVID-19 pandemic. On April 6, 2020, a proposal for supplement to DES Order Number 1 was submitted to the Council, providing for critical safeguards already adopted by 95% of more than 150 California cities with COVID-19 related relief orders, including reasonable and feasible repayment terms to protect the solvency of our local businesses, residents, and our fragile economic development. At the July 27th and August 10th meetings, City Manager attested he has hesitated to enact provisions of the supplement based on possible action by the state, but that the local repayment terms and charges would absolutely be addressed. However, those bills, AB 1436 and AB 1410, specifically do not provide any commercial relief or protection for our small businesses as provided for in DES Number 1 whatsoever, none. The suggestion to consider supersedence of our local ordinance by either of these bills is akin to throwing our commercial and small business tenants under the bus and directly into insolvency. That is completely irresponsible. DES Number 1 and its underlying state executive order N2820 continue to prevail. Local DES Order Number 1 clearly needs to be strengthened with elements of the proposed supplements at once, as the California Judicial Council has announced suspending ancillary COVID protections beginning on September 1 in 7 days. Otherwise, please place the supplement proposal on the next public agenda and now allow each of our votes to go on record regarding protection of our small business solvency, residential security, and establishing the essential economic stability of our city. Peggy Sadler. To the Simi Valley City Council, thank you for considering this resolution in support of our city and our police department. We citizens of Simi Valley are very proud of our Simi Valley Police Department. Thanks to their fine work, we are one of the safest cities in the United States, and we want to keep it that way. It was obvious that people who actually live here support our police department, as evidenced by the huge turnout last Saturday for the rally at City Hall. At a time when large cities throughout our nation are being ravaged by lawless groups, we need to ensure that these types of people do not start destroying our suburbs. Please pass the excellent resolution in support of our city and our police. Sincerely, Peggy Sadler. And that's all. I'll just check to see if any came in. And that's all the public statements.
Okay, comments? Councilmember Romanos.
I was looking at my colleagues to see if they wanted to go first. Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to address the issue about, the arrest for cocaine and heroin. I cannot speak to that specifically. I am not the police chief. I do not know the details. I know that there are some things that are federal laws and state laws, but I know that we, strive to, and I meet with the police chief at least once a month. I try to meet with him to see what's going on in the community, to see, what is happening with enforcement. I know that there's other circumstances surrounding that, but I do know that there is disparity. Having been a criminal justice major and having a law degree, I know that there's disparity in enforcement of the law. And I know some of that is federal, some of that is state, but that's part of the disparity that we need to address and that we need to advocate for as city council members on the state and the federal level in terms of disparity of enforcement of those laws and in terms of how people are incarcerated in this country, and especially people of color are incarcerated at a much higher rate. And not just with regard to drugs, but how they're treated once they are, faced with law enforcement and with sentencing guidelines as well. So that's something that I will continue to advocate for, to make sure that everyone, regardless of the color of their skin, is treated equally, whether it's on a state level or a federal level. So, in terms of our police department, again, I had a discussion with the police chief. He told me himself, he knows that, police officers and the police department is appreciated here. People are constantly dropping off goodies and saying thank you. And, I appreciate our police department, but I appreciate all of our employees. We have, very hardworking employees at every level. Whether it's at the Public Works Department. We had Public Works employees that were out there in 108-degree weather with 99% humidity, pouring hot cement asphalt on the ground just to make sure you didn't have potholes. So I want to commend all of our employees.
It's
Thank
getting
you.
past the 90.
Well, I would like to thank the many people who wrote in to commend our police officers. I will tell you that I would like to personally thank the people that put on that police rally on Saturday to commend and thank our police. I thought it was an event that was superlative, and it really showed a diverse group that came out and really showed appreciation for our officers and all that they do. And so I wanted to say thank you to those who wrote in, and thank you to those who participated, and thank you to our police. Very, very, very appreciative of that event. And the one other comment I was just going to quickly make as to Robbie Hidalgo's comments with regards to concern about commercial, I know that we'll be discussing a little bit more later. I'll be discussing a little bit concerns for businesses. I do think we need to be very mindful ultimately of what that means for, particularly for those businesses that have not been, for months have not been allowed to reopen. But I think we'll get there eventually. But again, returning to the major comment, very appreciative of all that happened this weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also wanted to just say how wonderful it was on Saturday. The majority of the city council was there. Our county supervisor was there. The people that put it on for us, Mr. Tolson, Mr. Frank, Mr. Pajewski volunteered. There were a lot of people involved with this. They did a great job. It moved along. But to me, one of the best things was the excitement of the people there. They were so thrilled to be there and to be able to show how much they support our police department. It was truly heartfelt from every single person there. We were one of the first cars to go through, the mayor and then the city council. And so I circled back and then was watching all the other cars go through. And people were just so happy. And they had their signs. Their kids had their little handmade signs, and they had really nice signs. It was just from one extreme to the other. And the public was just ecstatic to be able to be there and show our police department how much they're appreciated, especially with what's going on all around the nation. So I really want to thank those that put it together, and I wanted to thank everybody that wrote in about it. It really warms my heart. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to say I was very happy with the event on Saturday, and I was glad to be able to participate.
Thank you. I'd like to say thank you to everybody that showed up. It was a great turnout for the Police Appreciation Day. And a message to those who would like the discussion about defunding and/or reallocation of funds for the police department. This police department, when we became a city back in 1969, we tried something else as a city. We tried the Community Safety Agency. And when you tried something and it didn't work, I don't see a reason to go back and do it again unless you made some drastic changes. And that trial run was where the officers didn't dress as officers, they didn't perform as officers, they didn't drive vehicles like officers. And I've traveled all over this United States, and wherever I am, I always know that if you see a police officer, you can go to that person and get some kind of help. Even if it's, I'm out of gas, where do I go to a gas station? But what's the first place you look when you're fumbling around going, what do I do, what do I do? If you see a police officer nationwide, you go to that officer for help. So with that, I just want to thank our police department and virtually every police officer in this nation.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next on the agenda is item 6, the consent calendar, and there are no resolutions for your consideration.
Okay, questions regarding the consent?
I just want to know, Mayor, if we could get an update on consent item number 2 in terms of if there's a date on when they're going to open, or, so I don't know if I need to pull it just to ask that question.
Okay.
We can answer real quick.
Good evening. The Free Clinic has been occupying its space since May 7th, and they saw their first, it was in the report, I think it was about on the 19th, they saw their first medical patient in that new facility. So the Free Clinic itself, full operations, are operating out of its new facility, and they're in the stages of selecting their community partners for the multi-services section of the facility.
So the dental, the medical, the mental health, they're all up and running? Because last time I heard there was just part of it was running, but now they're fully operational?
Everything is fully operating. I think the only part that's still a little bit is the legal and the telehealth with regards to the availability of volunteers with everything that's going on. So those services are still available, but not as readily available as they were during normal times.
Okay, thank you. I move to approve consent items, the consent calendar, items 1 and 2.
Second?
Motion and second, call for the vote.
Please vote yes for me.
Done.
The motion passes unanimously.
Okay, excuse me, anybody want a break?
Do you need a break, Mayor? We can take a break if you need a break.
I can't hear you. That's, okay, everybody's good.
We're good.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next time.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next on the agenda is item 7A, second reading of ordinance number 1311, reducing the term of office for certain neighborhood council executive board members, and a determination that the action is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act. The reading of the ordinance is as follows. Ordinance number 1311, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Simi Valley reducing the term of office for certain neighborhood council executive board members, and a determination that the action is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act. And staff is available for questions.
I move that ordinance number 1311 be adopted.
Second.
Motion in 2 seconds. Call to the vote.
Please vote yes for me.
The motion passes unanimously. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next on the agenda is item 8A. Request for direction regarding the process for selection members of the Citizens Election Advisory Commission Selection Board. And Samantha Argabright is here for this presentation.
Good evening, Mayor Mashburn and members of the City Council once again. The item before you is a discussion of the selection of the members of the Citizens Election Advisory Commission Selection Board, or CEAC, as it is better known, including a historical summary of the formation of the CEAC. The city incorporated in 1969, and the early City Council members were interested in election reform and transparency. As a result, the city adopted Ordinance 109 in 1971, which was the city's early version of the Form 700. In 1973, the City Council took up campaign contributions and formed a committee to work with the city attorney to make recommendations to the City Council for an ordinance to address this. As a result, the council adopted Ordinance 179 in February of 1974. With these new guidelines in place, the Committee on Campaign Contributions believed that it was important to have an independent committee to implement the reform measures and recommended that the CEAC be formed. In 1974, Ordinance 180 was adopted, forming the CEAC. The city was ahead of its time with election reform guidelines, and in 1974, the Political Reform Act passed, and the city ordinances became redundant. Both Ordinance 109 and 179 were eventually repealed. However, the CEAC has remained, although the City Council considered whether it was still necessary in the early 1980s. The CEAC Selection Board has been a part of the CEAC since it was formed, and the description of the Selection Board members has not changed. It appears there was never a definition provided for service club or organization. The City Council has a number of options available for consideration this evening, including modify the city's municipal code related to the CEAC to provide a definition for service clubs and organizations in reference to the CEAC Selection Board, direct staff to add specific service clubs and organizations that is used when seeking members to serve on the selection board, consider phasing out the CEAC for future elections, make no changes, or provide different direction to staff. I'm available for questions.
Questions of staff?
I'm sorry, Mayor. In the report, it says that, and I commend the City Council for having the foresight to predict what the FPPC was going to ask for. So everything that is asked for is already done by the FPPC now in the Form 700. Is that correct?
Form 700, and the FPPC does review campaign contributions. They do conduct audits. Initially, they were more involved in state elections. Now they are also involved in local city, school district, special district elections as well.
Okay, and the campaign contribution forms are all online?
Correct.
So if someone wants it, they don't have to come to City Hall anymore. They can
That is correct.
go online and they can look up anybody's form and it's there?
Yes.
Okay, so is there anything that, because my experience with SEAC was, we came in, this, and SEAC is going to tell you, how the city runs, but it was all the city staff that did that. It wasn't anyone on SEAC who did that. So I was trying to understand, what does SEAC actually do that FPPC doesn't already do? So is there anything that SEAC does that FPPC doesn't already do, or the clerk doesn't already do?
Essentially, if there was to be a complaint lodged about a candidate statement, for example, in some cases, some people go directly to the SEAC for that, but the SEAC would then turn that over to the FPPC.
Okay, so the FPPC would still handle that anyways. And if the clerk saw a discrepancy, they could do that as well?
Correct. Okay,
so again, I'm just delving into the to the purpose of SEAC, because it seems to me superfluous. And there were only 4 applications, only 4 people applied for this?
So for the SEAC board itself, we received 3 applications for the SEAC, and there were 3 regular vacancies and 1 alternate. So there were 4 vacancies for the SEAC itself. And for the SEAC selection board this time, we did not receive a sufficient number of applications.
And does any other city have a SEAC committee?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, so we're the only one that has this?
That's correct.
At all, okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions?
Actually, Ruth asked the questions that I had already asked and that I even already posed to Ms. Blanco. I was curious to know the history of just the prevalence, and to her knowledge, there was not another one in Ventura County that exists. And of course, I don't know if we've gone beyond Ventura County, but this is very unique to our city. So I do think it shows that our city was very prescient and ahead of their time in terms of establishing it. Of course, it was established at a time when there were not computers, when they didn't have the internet to review things. It was a different time, and so I commend our founding fathers for doing it. But actually, I think the questions that Ruth has, that Councilmember Levis has asked are the ones that I would have asked myself.
Okay.
And if I may just interject, a number of years ago, I had gone to a city clerks convention, and no other city clerk in the state of California that I spoke to, and granted it was not a complete survey, there were no other city CX in the state of California from the clerks that I had spoken to.
So we're the real trendsetter.
Yeah, exactly.
Dee Dee?
I understand that the FPPC takes over most of this, but in reading the report, it said they do random. I, being a fiscally person and being a banker and numbers, I like the fact that SEAC looks at every single statement and makes sure they're correct. And they also would report anything that was misaligned or was done incorrectly. To me, that it helps out the city clerk by doing that. It also, to me, keeps it a little bit more, well, it's an outside entity doing it, so it's not a city employee, so there's no coercion, there's nothing along those lines. I do like that fact, but I also understand that if we are the only one doing it, maybe it has outrun its course, and I think I would kind of like to hear staff's recommendation in regards to that. Sorry, I'm putting it right back on him. Or the city manager, how's that?
All right.
You want that now, or?
I'll go ahead and take it now. I'll admit the paragraph at the bottom of page 3 I authored. Sam wrote the report, but that's actually my paragraph.
I highlighted that one.
I do think it's clear. At the time that the SEAC was formed, there was probably a very good reason. It was 3 years after the city was formed. We were in a different time then. As we talk about transparency now, I think the city council and the founding people of Simi Valley were very much aware of transparency back then as well, and were very progressive in the community services agency instead of the police department. And having this ordinance back in Ordinance 109 to create campaign filing statements and those things. But today, as was noted, you can sit at a computer and bring up any campaign statement for anyone in a current election, or I think we even have past ones as well online. The FPPC does not do regular audits, they do random audits, and there have been council candidates and mayoral candidates in Simi Valley that have been audited. So we do know that those audits do take place. But I think the bottom line is, as Councilmember Loevano said, is there a distinction between what SEAC does and what can be done by the average citizen nowadays, and there probably isn't. So we wanted to bring at least the option to you to at least consider, given the time commitment, given the role of the FPPC, given everything involved and the availability of statements, is there a need to continue on with this committee?
Okay. My turn?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I have comments, but then also one question. First of all, I'm one of the folks that always was in favor of SEAC, simply because I thought what a great way to make sure everything was done correctly, even if it wasn't really anything like fraud or anything like that. I'm talking about just filling out the paperwork correctly, putting your middle name where it belongs, or the date where it belongs, or your ID number where it belongs. And I appreciate the work SEAC has done over the years. However, my question is, how much staff time is put on it? And before I look for that answer, I'd say it's pretty clear now that you can go online, bring up anybody's forms and look at them and all their financials and see who's good and who's sloppy, and you have the ability to, anybody in the public can contact the FPPC and file a complaint, which I think would generate an investigation or an audit. So it's kind of like I started thinking, well, we always complain about government makes these committees and different stuff, and they never end them, even when their day is done. And now I'm going the other way. I think with computers and what have you, the day of SEAC is done. What they've done previously was great, but I want to hear that from staff also.
So I'll provide my perspective, and then certainly I would invite Lucy too as well. When I was doing the election portion, the city clerk or the elections official, when they take in any documents from the candidates, are required to kind of glance through those documents and catch anything that is glaring that might be missing, right? So there might be a name missing or, a page number missing, that kind of thing, to bring that to the candidate's attention. And so oftentimes with the SEAC meetings where documents like that are reviewed, that's when the SEAC is then asking the clerk to write the letter to the candidate to have those types of items addressed. So that's somewhat of a duplicate function, if you will. And then the preparing for the meetings, copying all the documents, delivering the documents, because typically the meetings for the SEAC are, they have to be within 5 days of the filing period. And so sometimes with the mail delays, we might get all of those documents, a day or two before the meeting is scheduled, which means then staff is frantically copying and then frantically driving out documents to the SEAC members. So that can be time consuming as well. And then the follow-up to the SEAC meetings is then writing the letters. There was a period missing on page 6, there was a last name missing on page 7, those types of things, and sending those out to the candidate. So then that's a heavy staff burden as well. Staff does work with the SEAC to prepare the candidate orientation manual before the filing period to ensure that everything is complete. So sometimes the SEAC will provide some great input on that if there's information that they think would be beneficial for someone who's never run for office. But I would say that it's a fairly time-consuming task for staff when there are other options available, and when staff is oftentimes guiding the SEAC for the purposes that they serve. But that's been my experience in working in the elections official capacity. Lucy, if you'd like to add anything.
Thank you, Sam. I think Sam touched up on everything. You did ask, Mayor, about the time it takes staff, and I was looking at it from the beginning, where we select for the selection board. We recruit for the selection board. We send all the letters out to the groups, the organizations. We prepare a staff report for council. We present it at council. It gets for the appointment. Then we have to recruit for the SEAC. Then we prepare the agenda to have the selection board interview there's a lot of time that's involved, staff time involved. Schedule the meetings. We have probably about, after every statement, campaign statement filing, according to the FP schedule, we have to prepare for an agenda for all of those meetings, plus minutes. This year, I put together the candidate manual. This was my first time working with SEAC, so I didn't reach out to SEAC. I just kind of put it together myself. But it worked out. I presented it to them, and they thought it worked, a good candidate manual. But there was a lot of time involved in putting it all together. And I think Sam also her point that she brought up. But there is a lot of time, and I think every tool we use is valuable. Sometimes we have to look and reviewing the statements. It's a job that the city clerks. It's always been a city clerk's role. I've been reviewing campaign statements for many years, and it's something that as city clerks, we're constantly going on. For our trainings, FPPC, every year they provide training for us, webinars, so that we're making sure that we're checking on everything. We have checklists that we go by. So I think There's a lot of preparation before when we have, for this, having this committee, and I did reach out, as Sam said, I reached out to other cities, and they don't have any, or they aren't even into,
Yeah, I would imagine
Lots
there's
of-
quite a bit of training you have
because
to do.
there is a lot
as
of
new
work
SEAC
involved.
member.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion. I don't have the language here, but I don't know if the motion is to overturn this ordinance or to eliminate SEAC or
Phase out.
to phase out.
Well, you technically, you'd want to, if you want to eliminate it or move on from SEAC, then you'd have to make a motion to bring back an ordinance to abolish.
It says,
SEAC.
consider a phasing out of SEAC for future elections.
And it was phrased that way that the council can decide to let it run its course for this 2020 election, or we can certainly end it at any time prior to.
Well, and I have to be honest, knowing that three of us on this dais are running for election right now, I didn't feel comfortable in any way doing anything with this current, the way it was set up. But my thought was once the election ended, it would make sense to phase out and to change and eliminate. But I leave it to other
I would be,
voices.
I'm all for efficiency. I know we're, I know Brian mentioned that, we are in a good position financially, but we may not be very soon. And so I would like to eliminate the burden from, city workers like Samantha and Lucy from those positions. It's already work they're already doing. So, I would make a motion to overturn, is that the correct
Well, you
motion?
could-
Overturn the ordinance?
To bring an ordinance to eliminate the SEAC, but you could leave the date of the termination for that meeting with some options. So you'd have the ordinance, and then you could decide then, would it be right after the election? Would it be immediately? You could make that decision at that time.
Okay, so,
So it's just, it would be a motion to bring back an ordinance eliminating the SEAC.
And that would be bringing it back in our September meeting, likely.
yes.
Yeah, that's, I hear what you're saying.
We can talk about the date then of when it's eliminated.
Okay.
So I'd like to make a motion to eliminate the ordinance, is that correct? To bring the ordinance to vote on elimination?
A
Sorry.
motion to bring an ordinance to eliminate the SEAC.
To eliminate the SEAC.
I'll second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We'll call for the vote.
I'll vote yes.
Thanks, Brian.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next item on the agenda is 9A, City Council Member Reports.
Okay, City Council member reports. We will start with Council Member Blitzker.
Thank you. Thank you. On August the 11th, Tuesday, I was privileged to attend the ribbon cutting of the Burrowwood Skate Plaza, and it was done with a social distanced setting, but it was just exciting that we now have that feature in our city, and I want to commend Sedona Parks and Rec. Of course, you were part of that, Councilmember Kavanaugh, but I wanted to commend Adam Swanson, who's a local skateboarder who helped in the design, and Tracy Engel, who was with the Rancho Simi Director of Recreation, and Ed Abela, who is, of course, the chair there. Anyway, just I think it's an exciting thing that we have. On Wednesday, August the 12th, like all of you, attended the elected officials' weekly briefing. At 1 o'clock, later in the afternoon, I attended the Business Recovery Task Force, and that's a weekly meeting, and I believe at that meeting we visited with state officials or federal officials the following week, but clearly trying to make some change for our businesses. On Thursday, August the 13th, through that weekend, I just want to commend our youth who are having to be creative in the things they've known to love. I was part of a virtual girls' camp. They couldn't actually go out camping because of the distancing location, so it was virtual girls' camp, and they slept in sleeping bags on their beds. They cooked on, they did their cooking on barbecue outside, and I taught ukulele lessons over Zoom. So anyway, I just want to commend our youth and all that they're doing to be creative. Into the next week. August 17th, of course, was the first day of school for Simi Valley Unified School District, and I have heard tremendous things about the planning and execution, and I know it wasn't flawless, but heard many very positive reports. So I want to commend our school district for all they're doing to have a safe, excellent learning environment for our students. On Tuesday, August the 18th, that is actually the anniversary of when the women's right to vote was ratified. That's the actual date. And a coworker brought to our office yellow roses for all of the women in the office. And the significance of that, and I just thought I would share that, is that Tennessee was the last state that ratified that 19th Amendment. And at the time, of course, the women suffragettes dressed in white, but those voting, the men, if they were against it, they wore a red rose in the lapel. If they were for it, they wore a yellow rose in their lapel. And so that's why yellow roses were brought. But what I love is the story that in Tennessee, it was really dicey whether or not Tennessee was going to go for it, and they were kind of one of the most, maybe the last opportunity, but the story is told, and it's supposed to be true, that there was a young senator who that morning had received a letter from his mother who basically said, young man, you need to go, you need to vote for suffragettes, and so you need to vote for the vote. You need to vote for them. But I was going to quote it exactly. But anyway, I love the thought that it was a mother's gentle influence that helped her son be directed, and that, anyway. So there are many lovely stories, people who fought for our right to vote. But so I love the significance of the yellow rose on that day. Wednesday, August 19th, again, attended the Open Business Task Force. There was another task force that I attended, which is a Simi Economic Recovery Task Force that's looking at ways to bring business here, and I was appreciative of the efforts of that group as well. On Thursday, August the 20th, I attended the Interfaith Forum where they discussed, I believe Councilmember Lovenos, you were on that call as well, but they discussed racial justice, equality, and it was chaired by John Tolson, who did an excellent job, and I want to commend the 9 religious representatives that were there and what they had to say and share. It was excellently done. Friday, August 21st, an Education Foundation board meeting. August 22nd, of course, was that police appreciation parade that, as Councilmember Kavanaugh expressed, was a lot of joy, a lot of happiness. It was just a spirit of an opportunity to celebrate our freedoms and celebrate the safety and the good works of our police force. And so it was 2 weeks of some good opportunities. So that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Lovenos.
Thank you, Mayor. On Tuesday, August 11th, I attended the California Native American Commission meeting. This was with regard to extending the Burro Flats Historic District, which is 25 acres, in the area that was formerly known as San Jose Field Lab Rocketdyne Facility. And the reason I attended that meeting was to advocate for the full cleanup of the Santa Susana Field Lab and to ensure that it is safe for Native American families to go up there. And that's why we need the full cleanup for in order to preserve the painted caves that are up there, but they can't be preserved unless we make sure that it is safe, that there's a full cleanup. And right now, by having historic designation, and it's not completed yet, but by having historic designation, it would provide a loophole for the Environmental Protection Agency. And so they would not have to clean up if it was designated all 2,800 acres as historic. Conveniently the boundaries and right where the Santa Susana Field Lab and the land owned by NASA, Boeing, and DOE. And the issue with that is that in Boeing's own report, 96 out of 100 people that would spend more than 2 hours on that premises would come away with cancer. And so my concern is for the safety of the Chumash, the Tataviam, the San Gabrielino, Native Americans that would want to go up there and celebrate the solstice, the fall or winter solstice up there in that area, that they would not be protected. And so I was advocating at the Native American Commission to make sure that there's a full cleanup from the Santa Susana Field Lab. On Wednesday, I too attended the weekly meeting on the COVID for the Ventura County elected officials. On Friday, I attended the California Historic Commission meeting online again to advocate and to make them aware. We have to be advocating for the safety of our residents here because they're not always aware of what happens at the local level, and at the state level, they're not always aware of the history of our communities or what has happened here. And so it's really important for me to make sure that they were aware of the impact that the Santa Susana Field Lab and the failure of cleanup that they agreed to in 2010 has had on our community, that we have such a high incidence of cancers, of thyroid issues, of dental issues, all of the impacts that we have had. And I know that we had adjourned, and I thank the mayor for adjourning the meeting a couple of months ago in memory of a 5-year-old girl who lost her battle to cancer, whose father was working on the cleanup of the demolition of the buildings at the Santa Susana Field Lab. So it is important because it does impact our community directly. I know that they had talked about expanding the cancer support services here in Simi Valley. We have the American Cancer Walk every year. And so it's something that impacts us. So it's important that we advocate at every level. So providing that history is really important and letting them know that this is something we want to continue. And I think my council members on the dais, every one of you have signed on to letters to ask for the full cleanup of the Santa Susana Field Lab. So I thank you for that. On Saturday, August 15th, there was the first ever Ventura County virtual Pride event. It's usually held in Ventura, but this year they did it online. They did it virtually. It was a lot of fun. They had, oh my goodness, they had a drag queen contest, and they had all kinds of speakers, and it was really fun, from Assemblymember Jackie Irwin to Senator Hannah Beth Jackson. And so there were a lot of people that participated in the Ventura County Virtual Pride event. It was beautiful. And so it was from East County. They often forget us here, all the way over here in Simi Valley, all the way over to Ventura and Oxnard and everywhere in between. So it was a beautiful event. And then I also attended there was a march for justice for Breonna Taylor and Vanessa Guillen. It was specifically addressing the issues of racial justice for women of color. And I want to commend the two young women, Aaliyah and Kelly, who organized this. And it is so inspiring to see, especially on the anniversary of the women's suffrage, to see our young women in the community stepping up and showing this kind of leadership. And especially those who are college graduates coming back to the community and giving back. That's just beautiful. I'm just so inspired by that. I, too, went back to school on Monday, August 17th. Along with Simi Valley Unified School District and all of my colleagues in LA Unified and everywhere else. It's been a bumpy road, that's all I can say, but we're all grinning and bearing it as best as we can. On Tuesday, August 18th, the Youth Council had a special online meeting, and they did talk about the vaping committee. They were very excited that we as a city council are going to take up the issue of looking at the ordinance of how many vaping shops we have in the community. So they formed their own committee to look at the issue of vape shops, and we had guest speakers from the Ventura County who talked about mental health issues that go along with vaping and more preventative measures. So they're very excited that we're listening to them and that there is a true partnership here between the Youth Council and the City Council. They also formed a committee for social media. As you know, the Simi Valley Youth Council has an Instagram page, but now they want to do a Twitter page, so they're looking at how to have that. That seems to be Royal High School students seem to enjoy Twitter more than Instagram, and I don't know why, but that's that's what they said. And other schools like Simi Valley High School and Santa Susana are more of Instagram, so they want to make sure to reach out to all of the students in Simi Valley and make sure that they're aware of all the activities that the Youth Council does. So it's really exciting. And we had all the new Youth Council members that joined us and were able to join committees. So, and we are still looking for someone from, we don't have a representative from Apollo High School, so that application will be reopening. So if you're from Apollo High School, you want to be on the Youth Council, please make sure that you keep an eye out for that. And I believe Sinaloa Middle School was the other one that we don't have a representative on Youth Council. So if you are from either one of those schools, just keep an eye out on the city webpage or on the Instagram, and you can apply to be on Youth Council. On Wednesday, August 19th, again, I attended the COVID meeting for the elected officials. And I had a meeting with Mr. Gabler. And then on Thursday, August 20th, I too attended the Forum on Race and Religion with the Interfaith and Spirituality Forum group, and I highly recommend that you follow the activities they do. It's really, really beautiful, from all kinds of faiths, from imams to rabbis to priests, and it was just beautiful to hear the messages of acceptance and courage and all those things, and how they're working together in the community to support everyone, regardless of their ethnicity, background, gender, sexual orientation. It was just a beautiful thing to see. And then on Friday, August 21st, I had a meeting with City Attorney Lonnie Eldridge, and Youth Council had their Scribble I-10 game night. So keep an eye out. The Youth Council is going to continue to do their online activities. Oh, gosh, all kinds of stuff they do. So keep an eye out for Instagram, and hopefully coming soon to you, Twitter for Simi Valley Youth Council. That's my report, Mayor.
Councilmember Kavanaugh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On Tuesday, August 11th, I also attended the opening of the skate park at Burrowwood Park. That does have a lot of special meaning to me because I was on the Rancho Simi Recreation and Park District Board when that first came up. We were at one of the conferences and we saw some portable skate parks, and that just got our thought process running, and we went with it, and then Elaine Freeman stayed with it. She wanted that skate park. So it came out wonderfully. It's in a beautiful area. Actually was a very underused park, so it was a great location to put it there. The worst part was we drove up, and I'm looking at that building, and I went to art class in that building 50 years ago. They should have tore it down then. So they're still going to need to replace that one. But the skate park itself is beautiful. It's a lot bigger than I thought. There were all the ages out there. It was wonderful to see them. Councilmember Litster did say thank you to some of the people that were involved. I also did want to mention Tom Evans. He was the designer. He's the landscape designer. So give Tom a little bit of credit along with the other ones that you mentioned, and the general manager, Dan Pernick. So thank you to them for doing a great job. And it was wonderful that they included the community skaters to get their input. Adam, and he spoke. So that was really a special thing. On Wednesday, August 12th, I also was on the elected officials call for COVID. On Thursday, August 13th, we had our Ventura County Animal Shelter Commission meeting. It was very interesting, so I made some notes that came up on the call. The Ventura County is going to be implementing a new license tag, and it's called a Pet Hub license tag. These are smart tags. They're products for all new licenses, and they're going to start them on September 1st. It allows a finder of an animal to scan a QR code, and it will come up with the owner's information. Oh, nice. And the owner's information is only what you authorize. So, for example, Jackie Rose, the director, said, you can put just your first name and a phone number, or whatever you want to do. But you can upload your information to the 24-hour call center. Anyone scanning that with a QR reader will get your phone number and name if that's what you input. It's going to be the same cost, $10 a year. So it's really, really worthwhile to do that. I was very excited about that. So one of the other things that we discussed was that Edison gave Ventura County money from the Thomas Fire. And so for the Ventura County Animal Shelter, we were able to purchase a backup generator for our Simi Valley location. It's still not open, but we now have a backup generator should we need that. And they also purchased a new 5,000-gallon water tank for the Camarillo location. And what I thought was really cute, we're still not allowed to go except by appointments only, but they created a new turtle pond at the Camarillo location. And it was done with some volunteers that are experts in turtles, and so they're better off outside. So they created a pond outside to provide better housing and public viewing. So, and then other updates, there were other updates and other purchases that were funded by the Animal Services Foundation. They also have a 501c3. One of the last things that they also discussed was in the East County, and I can't remember if it was at one of the East County homeless shelters. They had a homeless services for animals. So Ventura County Animal Services came out and did flea treatments, vaccines, dewormings, microchips, licensing, and spay-neuter surgeries for our homeless population's animals. And I mentioned that to them, and I asked them if they would be willing to come out here, to, for example, to the Samaritan Center, and they said they would be more than willing to do that for us. So I thought that was very, very good news. They also are coming up with a new website. It's going to be a soft opening in mid-October. I didn't realize it. The Ventura County Animal Shelter website gets 1,000 hits a day. So that's a lot of people going through there. But so they're upgrading that so they'll be able to better serve the community. So it was an exciting meeting. There were a lot of good things going on. Then on Wednesday, August 19th, again, we had the COVID-19 call. And then after that, I attended the Simi Valley Veterans Service Task Force meeting. Usually Councilmember Litzter was there, but unfortunately she couldn't make it that day. So I gave them her apologies. We're still talking about whether they want to do a 501c3 for the veterans. They'd like to get a location. It's still up in the air. So we're working with Assembly Member Chrissy Smith, director out here, Ryan, is handling the meetings for that. So we're looking into different things, and he'll get back with us on that. Thursday, October 20th, we were supposed to have our EDC meeting, but it was dark for August. But Bruce Stensley wanted everyone to know they're still working. They're still doing, everything is still available. They're doing, the microloans. They're helping people. They've got advice for small businesses free of charge. So they're still all working and available for help. And again, I'll just mention on Saturday, August 22nd, the Simi PD Appreciation Parade. That was just fantastic. And again, it was just very, very heartwarming and very exciting to see our community come together to celebrate our wonderful police department and to just really have a joyous day. So that's it from me, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Judge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I attended the COVID briefings, both of them on the 12th and the 19th. I was able also with you to put those fantastic board members on the foundation that we saw today. And congratulations to the people on the interviews. And again, for the fourth person that didn't make it in this interview, hopefully the foundation will pick him up and put him on because he was also an outstanding candidate. My report's going to be pretty short. I've been helping a lot of businesses around town with their problems. Listening to a lot of people just tell me there's not too much we can do, obviously, but I've been trying to listen to everybody that tells a story about stuff that's just going bad, and I don't know how long our small businesses are going to be able to hang on to what's going on right now. So if you're in that mode, please say a prayer for our small businesses and hope that they get through this okay. On Sunday, August 23rd, I attended the police parade, not Sunday, the 23rd, the 22nd. I I had my wife drive me around in the parade. That's about all I can do nowadays. Anyways, so I was curious because during all the public comments about the parade, I kept hearing the mention of a citizen proclamation. Is there any way we can get that read into the record or had that put somewhere where some people can see it?
It's my intention to bring that up under 9B.
You got it. Okay, fine. I'll move on. Yep. I did want to congratulate Devin Hitchens. He drew an outstanding picture of a police car that was donated to the police station, I believe. The president of the POA, Tim Wiedemeyer, had a picture of it on Facebook, and it was just awesome. I had to call him and say, hey, who drew that? Apparently, Devin Hitchens drew it, and Shaylee and Katie Bradbury put up the money for it. They are both representatives of the Corona cruise that's been going on ever since this craziness started. So congratulations to them. That was a great picture. And that's my report.
Okay. Thank you. It's my turn for my report. It's going to be a little redundant now. First of all, I too went to the Skate Plaza ribbon cutting event, and great event. I'm very happy that facility is here in our city. Long time coming. It'll be I think a very well used facility, and Of course, I can't say this, but you know me, I'll go ahead and say it anyway. It looks to me from the people I saw out there that I'm glad it's at a park, and the Park District did some thinking, because I see it enlarged in the future because of the way it's being used. The numbers out there are just incredible. And Dee Dee, how long were you on the Park District and you wanted that building torn down and you didn't get it torn down?
I know. Sorry about that.
You said it. You walked into that. Okay, also, I attended a Zoom housing symposium with the Caneo Simi Moore Park Realtor Association. And I just want to thank those folks for being involved and including us. And I think the more that we could interact with the realtors, the better off we will be. They get a good picture of what's going on in our community and get input from the real estate board on the direction they see it going. We can learn from that. And they can also give input into the direction they'd like to see it go. I also was with Mayor Pro Tem Judge on the foundation interviews. I enjoyed it very much. I thought it was a well-prepared process, and also the applicants were outstanding. So I'm looking forward to seeing that go forward. Now, Mike Judge kind of took care of this, but at any rate, I have something here that's going to be displayed in the police department station. And the artist is Devin Hitchens, and he was commissioned and it was paid for by Shaylee and Katie Bradbury and a group called Corona Cruise. And I have it here, and I'd like the chief to come forward. So this is wherever you can find room. But I think this young man is an incredible artist, and it's a great gift to the city and all the others. So thank you. Okay, next item. 9B. I'll go ahead and, since I already let the cat out of the bag a little bit, would this be the appropriate place to discuss that proclamation? I know we can't discuss it tonight based on, it's not agendized.
You can ask staff to bring it back at the next council meeting. We can, if you'd like, we can put it onto the pretty paper and bring it back for the council to be read here at the council meeting.
Okay. Is that okay with the council? Okay.
May I have, oh, I'm sorry.
And then the other, I have one other thing. I want to put on, hopefully get a second for it. I would like to discuss doing something for Mayor Stratton, Greg Stratton, who we lost this week. I don't know what it is. It's too early to say, but I think he was such a huge part of this city and has done so much for this city that it'd be appropriate for this council to at least have a discussion and throw out ideas on how to preserve his legacy.
I'd be honored to second that.
Okay.
If you'd like, we can put together some ideas and bring it back at a council meeting, and then you can chew on it and decide which way you'd like to go.
Okay, that's fine. Okay.
That's what I was going to say.
Okay, so Dee Dee and I, let's see, we both first, something like that. No,
I seconded you, we're good.
We're good. Okay.
So, thank you. And I want to piggyback to a little bit on something that Councilmember Judge referenced, I am very, very concerned about our businesses and what is going on in this community. I think that we need to vocally be advocates for how they are hurting and they're being harmed, and that we should no longer be on the watch list. By my calculations, in fact, I even went through and pulled out the chart that basically the state uses to decide the metrics that keep us on the watch list. And I am convinced that part of the reason we're on this list is because we have been so diligent with our testing. If you look at those who have gone off the list and see what numbers what their average is per 100,000, and there's a direct correlation to the amount of testing and the amount of cases. And so we have, anyway, I just...
I would second your motion. I don't think this is the place to...
Okay. So what it looks like, whether it is letters to be written, whether it's, I just think we need to make a real vocal statement that we've got to be doing something.
Okay, but I think to do it correctly, we should agendize it.
Well, here's my concern. If we agendize it, that's 3 weeks from today. That's when our next meeting is. That's a whole, almost another month of businesses if we're still on the list. I think we need to write something now.
We can write something on behalf of the city council and have that sent up to Governor Newsom. And
I would like to see that before it's signed on. I disagree in the approach, and so I don't want my name on something that I don't disagree with. We all have the capacity as individuals to go and advocate at the county, state, federal level for any issue, just like I advocated at the federal level for funding for municipalities, because we have been left out of every single package. So we can individually write letters and advocate and go to board meetings like I've done so at the state and federal level. So there's nothing that prevents us from doing that, but
One
Yeah.
thing, if I may,
Yeah.
Councilmember, the whole council, since it's not on the agenda, you can't actually vote to authorize the city manager to write a letter on behalf of the city council right now. But the city manager could say that he may intend to write such a letter on behalf of either city manager or, in that role. So he
And
can
then
do.
we would have the ability to approve or disapprove.
Well, no, the city manager can do it on his authority, or you would have to agendize a specific thing.
Well, for urgency, I'd like him to do it with his authority, and then I guess it's on his name. And I have written my own personal letters, but I just think it behooves us as a city board to say something.
I don't disagree with you, but I'd like to see it agendized just in case it doesn't go through.
Let's do both. Yeah, I hear you. Okay.
It's backed up that way.
Okay.
Okay?
I like that.
Okay. You good with that? Okay.
Thank you.
Are we doing 9B, Mayor? I'd like to, this is another issue that like Councilwoman Litster, I think is pressing because of the issue, and I don't know if it needs to be a 9B or not, but I would like to change our policy on opening the cooling centers for the cooling center at our senior center. I know it was stated that it had to be 105 degrees and the temperature, but we have rolling blackouts, we have vulnerable citizens. I would like that policy to be changed so that it's more accessible. Other cities have cooling centers open from 10 a.m. Till 7 p.m., and they don't have to wait till it's 108 degrees to opening up the cooling center. We need to help our most vulnerable residents right now. So that's one 9B request I have. My second 9B request is I also want to protect businesses, and we got an email, or at least I got an email, I don't know if the rest of council got an email, from the California Grocers Association asking for protection of their essential workers. And I would like to see that agendized, that I would like to see us see how we can, again, and I brought this up before and I'll bring it up again because the California Grocers Association asked specifically in an email for us to protect their essential workers from people who are still refusing to wear masks. And yesterday we were #1 in the county. The city of Simi Valley had the most number of new COVID cases because people are going into, and this is in the email that I got, people are going into certain stores, grocery stores and stores and taking their masks off. And that is hurting their essential workers, and that's why they're asking us to protect their workers. So we want to protect businesses, and we have to protect the workers, the essential workers that are working at those businesses. And lastly, I would like to see the protection of businesses, as Mr. Hidalgo had mentioned. Again, We need to do something as a city, not just talk about helping, but actually helping. We have funds available through COVID relief funds that we can use to help, and we can negotiate. Mayor Mashburn said he talked to the Realtor Association about how we negotiate with commercial landlords to help commercial tenants who are struggling so badly right now. And we're going to see a slew of businesses more that close with Congress not having given any money to municipalities to help our businesses. So we have to come up with a plan on how we help them. Not just talk, an actual plan.
So we need a second for each one of these three.
The one you mentioned about the mask,
Yes.
were you asking just, well, let's put it on. Let's just do that. I don't want to discuss it now as being appropriate, but I'm for that. Let's discuss that.
Okay.
Yeah, what we're talking about, in particular grocery stores, but really anywhere.
Yeah, they talked about retail, like chain retail stores, they talked about that as well, but they said that, and I'll forward the email. Did you receive the email or not? So that, not then.
Yeah, I did.
I will, okay. Because
Yeah.
if not, I'll send it to the
But
city
anyway,
manager.
we'll
Yeah.
put that on the agenda.
And then the cooling centers,
And I'd like to speak to the cooling centers because I too had reached out to our city manager, Brian Gabler, and we had the discussion before all the heat. I think that this is an exceptional time because we don't have the normal cooling centers like your theaters and the places where people and fast food places they can't go into. So I think that makes this an exceptional time. And so I guess I would be supportive of a policy particularly specific to COVID that offers relief at a much faster.
Wouldn't that fall, and we could just voice it to him, and he can do that in your position?
Well, and that's what, if we wait 3 weeks, the heat may be over. So I think I think just vocalizing it right now has maybe done it.
Do we have a count of how many people used it when it did it?
Yes, on the first day, on Tuesday, there were no users. On Wednesday, there were 2. On Thursday, there were 4, and on Friday, there were 5. All senior citizens.
Yeah, as they become aware of it.
We probably ought to be, I can't, okay, you want to agendize it, you want a second, Ruth, to agendize that?
Well, I'm willing to agendize it, but it may just be that.
Sometimes it's traditional. If city manager knows exactly what he might do, then the council abandons the agendizing, or if you need to put it on. So it's sort of depends on.
Can we just provide direction?
The thing I was going to say real quick is, if he decides, I think, to take into consideration if we're serving 4 or 5 people versus how many staff it takes to bring them all in and COVID compliant, that we better look at alternative places, like, I don't know where, but places obviously that are air-conditioned, lobbies of hotels or something like that, maybe. I'm just throwing that out there.
I think it's clear the council would like to see a change on at least the existing cooling center policy, and I'm more than happy to implement that right now.
Okay.
Particularly during COVID, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so we don't need to agendize that. He'll take care of it.
Thank you.
Right, just, yeah.
The other one you have?
The last one was looking at negotiating or looking at how we protect our businesses who are behind our commercial tenants specifically. Since there was no state legislation protecting commercial tenants, I want to know how we're going to protect commercial tenants in our city.
I can tell you that, and Mr. Hildog was correct, the state has a September 1 deadline in order to act for eviction protection. They are currently focusing on residential renters. The city attorney and I have a DES all drafted and ready to go, that all I need is this pen and sign it to protect everyone on August 31st if the state fails to act. We will not leave our businesses out in the cold on their eviction protection. So we're ready to act and to protect the businesses in town. We also have, and I know I mentioned it at the last meeting, the loan program that our staff has put together, that we should be just about done with it and be able to roll that out within the next week. So we
And
can
it's
provide,
a grant program.
It is a grant program,
Sorry,
so we will be able to
clarify.
provide rental assistance to our small businesses in that regard as well.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? That's it? Okay. Unlike the last few meetings, our adjournment is not as joyous tonight. First of all, we need to adjourn in memory of former mayor, city council member, and the list goes on with Greg Stratton. He passed away, and I always spoke of him as a gentleman, and I kind of put him in the category, like if you're a minor league ball player and there's a major league Hall of Famer up there, and you finally make the major leagues and you go into the dugout and you turn around and you look and you go, holy mackerel, I'm sitting next to Greg Stratton. And that's the kind of guy he was to me, and I didn't know him super well, but had a huge amount of respect for him and everything that he's done for the city. So we'll be adjourning tonight in his memory. Second person is also very close to me, is Diane Morgan. Diane is the retired fire marshal from the Ventura County Fire Department. And when I spoke of earlier this evening, spoke of having worked for an elected lady, while Diane Morgan wasn't elected, she was a fire chief that I worked for a number of years, and she's second to none. She was just incredibly talented and great lady and a great leader, wonderful person to work with. And I know many people at planning and throughout the city remember Diane. She worked with the county for 21 years. And she passed away in July. Then there's Irma Liu, and that is Officer Richie Liu's mother. So, and there. And then Esther Faye Rose. What? Oh, thank you. Esther is Trinice Rose Bandy's mother, and Trinice is a code compliance officer with the city. And also Lola Jean Coyne, and that's Martha Coyne's mother. She passed away, so we got hit pretty hard, and we're going to adjourn in the memory of everybody there tonight. So with that, the meeting's adjourned.